What up, everyone? Patty here, also known as Tox or and welcome to the first ever entry of ToxTells. And this is going to be just the first of many more to come because if there's something I have an abundance of in my life, it is crazy, insane stories that are so crazy that they may be hard to believe at times. But they're all 100% real, genuine, not fake at all. Stories from my life, past experiences, and that is a guarantee from me to you. So I thought we'd start this whole entire series off with a straight up banger of a story, a classic from my past, my childhood. This is the story about the time I got caught vandalizing my middle school. So, when I was 11 years old, all the way back in the glorious year of 2003. And for me, I don't know if it was the same for some of you guys, which I'm sure for some of you it was. At my school district, 6th grade was the first year of middle school, which, looking back, I remember being extremely nerve-wracking for me. It was a huge deal at the time. I was never a fan of school at that time, at that age. And the story takes place one fateful afternoon when I happened to be hanging out after school at the after-school program that we had at our middle school, which was rare for me. I didn't do that a lot at that time. So this after-school program for us was pretty basic. It was basically in the cafeteria. It was divided into two sections. One half was people doing like crafts, and in the other half of the cafeteria were kids just doing homework. And all around that, you could also just kind of hang out and, sit at a table with your friends and talk, shoot the shit, just chill. And on that particular day, that's what I was doing. I was sitting in the corner of the cafeteria at a table with a couple of my homies, a couple of my boys from back in the day, and we were just chilling. So, I had a friend, his name was, for the sake of the story, we're going to call him Derek, and Derek and I had a complicated friendship because at the time, we were kind of friends, we were like acquaintances, but eventually we became very good friends, and actually to this day are still very close, one of my best friends of all time, actually. Anyways, Derek at the time was dating this girl, and for the sake of the story, we're going to call her Victoria. And I had a secret crush on Victoria, but in the fact that not only did I not tell anybody about it, but I don't think that I myself had even accepted it at the time or acknowledged it, but I knew I did. So anyway, now that we have that context, both Derek and Victoria walk up at this time and sit down with us at the table with me and my homies I'm fucking shooting the shit with. And as soon as they sit down, they start to engage in some PDA, which I think most of you probably know, stands for Public Displays of Affection. And I'm sure when I say that, you guys are thinking, oh, 6th grade, middle school, 11 years old, what kind of PDA could they be up to? Like holding hands and little pecks on the cheek? No. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but even when I was in 6th grade at 11 years old, the kids who were dating were doing heavy makeout sessions, and heavy petting is what they would call it in health class, but feeling each other up. So they start doing that immediately. And I see this, and something in me kind of snaps. I must have already had something else going on. I can't remember because it's so long ago, but I have to think that I was already kind of on edge and having maybe just a bad day. But because of this, I just get up and I just, without saying anything, I leave the cafeteria. Now, this is where things really get interesting. So, I leave the cafeteria, and in my middle school, you come out of the cafeteria, and in that hallway, right next to the cafeteria, was the gym. So I don't really know what I'm doing at this point. I didn't have a plan. I just know that my pulse was elevating, I was getting heated, my emotions were running high, so I just walk into the gym. And during after school, during the after-school program in my middle school. Another thing that was happening that I didn't really mention before was there were always kids in the gym playing some game, whether it be like kickball, steal the goal, capture the flag, something along those lines, ultimate football, that type of shit. And on that specific day, there were a bunch of kids in the gym playing a game called Larish. Now, I don't know if you guys know what game that is, what it consists of, but it doesn't really matter. All you need to know is, to me, Larish, it's pretty ass. There's much better games you can play, but I digress. So, anyway, I walk into the gym, and kids are playing Larish, probably about 20, maybe a little more than that, and right as I walk into the gym, I notice there's a desk to the right of the door I walked in. It's a sign-up sheet to sign up for whatever game they're playing that day at the after-school program. And with the sign-up sheet, there is for some reason, not a pen, not a pencil, but a permanent marker, because that's necessary. But I see this permanent marker, and like I said, I have no plan, but I don't know why. I grab it, and I beeline it straight to the other side of the gym where the entrance to the boys' locker room is. So I enter the locker room, and I take the marker in my right hand, and I guess out of anger or frustration, something like that, I throw it as hard as I can against one of the lockers, and it smashes into pieces, breaks open. I notice the part of the marker that kind of feeds the ink to the tip. I think it might be called like a wick, but it looks like a brush kind of, falls out onto the ground, and I just pick it up. I don't even think twice about it. I just kind of do it as a reflex almost, and immediately, of course, now there's permanent marker staining my hands all over. And I look at this, and then basically without really any hesitation at all, I just start going to town on the lockers in the locker room. I just start putting streaks all up and down them, all the way from one end to the other end, like 5 rows of that per locker, per section of lockers in the locker room. Then I proceed to go to the back where there was a bunch of showers that we never used because we never really took showers in middle school gym for whatever reason. And because of that, they had just like a ton of excess desks that they didn't have, I guess, storage for. So they would store these desks in the back of the showers of the boys' locker room. But of course, that's not going to stop me. So I start moving these desks out of the way because I want to do some stuff to the walls in the locker room showers as well. So I move the desks out of the way and I write in massive letters on 2 of the walls, just like so big that it takes up almost the whole wall on each side. I write 2 choice words. I guess I'm just going to give you a hint on what they were because I don't know. Don't want to get striked by YouTube or any of that dumb stuff. But one of the words started with a C and the other words started with a B. I'm sure you can figure it out. So I write those 2 lovely words in massive letters on those 2 walls, and then I leave the locker room. And then instead of just leaving the gym through the exit that's like on the same side as the entrance to the locker rooms, I decide for some reason to walk back out the way that I came on the opposite wall of the gym. And real quick now, just for context because it's going to be important, in my middle school gym on the 2 far walls, there were pads like installed into the walls, like wrestling type pads. And at that time, it just happened to be like maybe a week or 2 after the middle school had just installed brand new pads on those walls. So being the dumbass that I am and was at the time, I think, you know what? I just don't think that this act of vandalism has been big enough. I don't think I've really left my mark as an 11-year-old in middle school. So I proceed to, while the 20 or so kids are still playing the game of Larish I mentioned earlier, I just walk all the way down the one wall to the other side to the entrance I first walked in. But as I'm walking back to that entrance, the whole time I have the marker brush thing still in my right hand, and I'm just pressing it on the brand new pads that just got installed. So I'm leaving this massive, dark, permanent marker streak as I'm walking to the entrance that I came in originally, as there's about 20 or so kids playing Larish standing right there. Like, if you wanted to witness to a crime, this is how you do it. So I make it to the entrance that I originally walked in, and I leave the gym, finally. And right about here is when everything starts to actually sink in. I start to really process what it is I just did as a very young kid. Because the whole time I was doing it, I can remember that it was almost like I was on autopilot. It was weird. I didn't feel super lucid. It just kind of happened, and it happened very quickly. And I'm not saying that to shift any blame for my 11-year-old self. I was just very young, and I did a very stupid thing. So immediately I make my way to the bathroom that's in the same hallway as the gym and the cafeteria, and I attempt to start washing the permanent marker off of my hands. And of course, because it's permanent marker and it's like a lot of permanent marker on my hands, so as I'm sure you can imagine, it's not going well for me at all. And of course, like I'm inside of my very own nightmare, as I'm washing the permanent marker off of my hands, or attempting to, that is, I hear the secretary from the main office of the school say my name, please report to the principal's office immediately, in a very stern voice, of course, and my stomach immediately just drops. And I know I'm totally screwed. There's no point in trying to get out of this, but I also don't know what else to do but to leave the bathroom and start heading towards the main office. So for the sake of the story, I'm going to call my middle school principal, Mr. Nielsen. So I get to the main office and I walk in, and the secretary says, go right in to Mr. Nielsen's. He needs to see you right away. And I walk in, and as I'm walking in, I can see him reading my face, and I can tell already he knows exactly what's up. But of course he does, because he had about 20 to 30 eyewitnesses who saw me vandalize the gym mats. Didn't see me do the locker room, but they at least saw that part, so I was already completely done for. So Mr. Nielsen, he decides he's going to get right into it. He's going to go right for the jugular. He's not going to beat around the bush. He opens with, hey, what's that all over your hands? And like a dumb little kid who quite literally just got caught red-handed, I decide I'm going to lie. I can get out of this. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I was not getting out of it. I'm sure you guys probably already know that. And not that I've ever really been, great at lying, but let me tell you, when I was 11 years old, I was severely lacking in the ability to think on my feet in a high-pressure situation such as this. So I come up with something pretty weak for an excuse, and it was something along the lines of, oh, my pen exploded in my backpack, and I didn't know, and I reached my hand in there, and that's how all this ink got in my hands. And instead of going with the most obvious choice here of what to do next, Mr. Nielsen doesn't just call me out on the spot. Instead, he decides, I'm going to do this the right way. And he says, you, come with me. And I proceed to get up with my head down in shame and follow him right out of the main office. So, of course, we go right to the gym. We walk in. I think all the kids that were playing Larish earlier scattered immediately. And he just starts screaming at me and pointing at the mats. I can't even remember all the specifics, but, picture a 6'3", 45-year-old man screaming at an 11-year-old child, just losing his shit, completely unhinged, asking me if I'm stupid or something, asking me if I know how much money this is going to cost the school, and I am just blank. I can't even form a thought in my head. I'm just scared. out of my mind, feeling like I'm about to basically piss myself, which I didn't. Kudos to 11-year-old me. I held my shit together, but I was scared enough where I probably could have. I'd never been yelled at like that before, even by my own parents, and they yelled at me pretty aggressively at times. But this was on a whole other level. So anyways, after all is said and done, they, of course, called my parents, let them know what I did. They were beside themselves, completely shocked that at this age I would do something like this, which is totally understandable and reasonable. And basically, since I was so young, it was now just on my parents to get this problem fixed, whether it be to pay for all new mats to be installed or to find some way to get the permanent marker off of them. It was now their problem. And, well, of course, my parents were completely livid. They weren't going to just leave me hanging, and luckily, my dad worked as a dispatcher for a heating oil company my whole childhood, so he had access to some pretty high-grade industrial solvents. So he made his way over to the school with said solvents so that he and I could try to scrub the permanent marker off of the mats. And let me tell you, we scrubbed those mats for probably about 3 to 4 hours straight, until we finally realized that there was no way we were going to be able to get the permanent marker all the way off of the mats. We had scrubbed them down enough to the point where the marker was definitely quite a bit more faded than it originally was, but it wasn't happening. They were not going to be completely clean. And in the end, my parents just ended up having to foot the bill for the school to install new mats all over again. And I can't remember exactly how much it was that it cost them, but for some reason the number that pops into my head when I think about it is like $280, but that seems low. But back then, who knows, maybe that was a lot. I just remember hearing the number and it seeming like a lot of money to my 11-year-old brain. So what's the moral of the story? Is there a moral to the story? Well, I suppose a pretty simple one. Just think before you act. Even if you're 11 years old and you're in your first year of middle school, don't act on impulse. It could end up costing you a lot of money and putting you in a very embarrassing position. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Like the video if you enjoyed it, or just like it if you want to show some support to me. Comment down below if you want the next story I tell to be about how I got kicked out of the after-school program in high school a couple years later. And subscribe if you're new. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace. Blast off the shatters, the backspout, splinter to blackout, my man's